Good evening. Charles X. White here, your host for Community Views and Solutions. It's August, everyone. It's hot, everyone, and very, very, very hot for the rest of the month. Okay, we have a pretty interesting show tonight, Community Views and Solutions. We have a couple of guests that we're going to introduce a little later. But I want to cover a few points. One point is President Trump. Once the phone number goes on the screen, we would like for anyone to call in that has something to say good about President Trump. And if you don't have anything good to say, just call in and say whatever you want to say, good, bad, or indifferent about President Trump. But we also want to recognize the lives that have been lost in those terrible shootings and incidents, that we have to take note, take stock, and take care of our surroundings, be aware. Parents, make sure you talk to your children, even if they're 30 years old, about being aware of their surroundings, day or night. That was a terrible situation, and we don't know when the next one or where the next one is. So if you want to call in, 713-807-1794, and have a comment about the shootings, offer your condolence to America and the people from Ohio and El Paso. You might just want to talk about it. We may want to spend a little time just on that subject, crime and safety in Houston. Do you have any instances that you want to share with us about dangerous situations? In the news, there's a lot being said today and tonight about the Houston Independent School District and the Texas Education Agency's ruling as whether if they're going to take over HISD or just what the status of HISD will be. It's going to be an interesting situation with that. We all remember when HISD absorbed or took over North Forest. It may even be now, in hindsight, that North Forest should have taken over HISD. But the interesting thing about that is Texas Education Agency had a board of managers in North Forest for 3 or 4 years prior to the takeover. And if North Forest had a board of managers assigned to North Forest from the Texas Education Agency, and then they blamed the North Forest people for no progress. Something seems a little strange about that. Another big thing in the news is the November 2019 election. Let's see here. Right now we have 8 candidates for mayor, running for mayor. No doubt Mayor Turner believes he should have another term. Now this is a rumor. We don't spread rumors on this show, but we're going to spread this one. That's a rumor that says, now I don't know if it's true. Some of you may know if it's true or not. But the rumor is we didn't get anything. When I say we, I'm talking about black people. We didn't get anything under Bill White. We didn't get anything under Mayor Parker. And we gave both of them 8 years, whatever that term was, 3 2-year term, 3 2-year terms, whatever that was. So the question is, we're not going to get nothing under Turner. Well, we might as well give him another term as well. Now, that's a rumor. I'm just saying. District B on the north side. So far, 8 candidates. District D, 5 candidates. And District C is 5 candidates. Now, the deadline for filing for city council and the mayor is August 18th. We may have some more candidates filing, or we may have some candidates to drop out. September the 12th and 13th, a big event happening in Houston at Texas Southern University. The Democratic debate. The 20 or however many candidates will be in Houston at Texas Southern University for 2 nights, September 12th and September 13th. That's going to be a big event, a big happening for Houston. Well, the number to call in is 713-807-1794. We're going to introduce our first guest from the Houston Area Urban League. And the Houston Area Urban League has been here before, and it's a subject about housing. And the housing subject is a huge subject. But specifically, we're going to focus on housing for veterans. Now, if you are a veteran and you have questions, and we had at one of our community meetings or breakfasts, the Urban League came out and serviced about 20 veterans at one of our meetings. So we want to try to work with the Urban League and the housing program for our veterans as much as we can. And we have in the studio now, and we have another representative coming, Ms. Winslow. Ms. Winslow is a outreach specialist.
A veterans support specialist.
That's right. You're correct me now. You know, I don't want to make you the president when you're the vice president.
Well, you can just call me a veterans case manager.
All right.
That's probably an easier term to reference than being a support person.
What give us some of the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s that most veterans don't know and need to know, should know, and maybe a relative of a veteran may be helped with some of the information that you can share with us.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about the program that the Urban League has been funded by the Texas Veterans Commission to provide support to ensure housing stability for veterans. And what I didn't know until recently, that this program is funded by the Texas Lottery. So when you go buy a lottery ticket and you see that lottery ticket that says veterans programs, that lottery purchase funds the program that we currently are supporting. And we are in our starting at the next year of our funding for July 1st through June 30th of 2020. And our program really focuses on providing housing stability to veterans who, for some reason, it could be mental illness, it could be poor decisions, but for some reason, they're in crisis when it comes to housing. And we work through the Veterans Administration and their case managers, and they work with the City of Houston Housing to get what we call a HUD-VASH voucher for veterans. And HUD-VASH is Housing Urban Development Veteran Administrative Supportive supporting housing voucher. And with that voucher, they are able to get a stipend for housing based upon their income. And for those veterans that come to the Urban League, our main priority is veterans who are either delinquent in rent, have late fees piling up, or they need a deposit. So working with the VA, the veteran comes to the Urban League and we go through what we call an intake process. And we capture their information, we look at their the qualifications is that you have an honorable or general discharge.
What about dishonorable?
Dishonorable discharges are not eligible.
Okay.
That people who are in crisis, not because of something that they did where they were in full control of the decision, but just because something happened and you had unexpected bills, you had medical, whether it could be medical, whether it could be your car broke down, or you had some other family crisis. So for something happened that your portion of your rent that has been designated between the City of Houston Housing and the landlord, you're not able to make. So they come to us, we work with their landlords and let them know that the veteran has come to the Urban League and we're in the process of doing the analysis to determine what type of support that we can provide them. Right now, the grant that we have a cap that we can provide $1,200 in service for this grant year per veteran. And the reason we reach out to the landlord, we want to stop the late fees from accumulating. Work with the landlord to say, we know they're late, we are going to make them whole. Can you suspend the accumulation of late fees? Because the late fees in some cases could accumulate to the point where the money is going toward late fees and doing very little to help make the veteran whole with their monthly rent. So we do that when they come through the intake session. We try to do financial management. Let's do a budget.
Let me ask you this. Do you ever do, if a person is just so far behind, do you say, cut your losses and let's start over?
Well, that has happened in the past but then in that case, they'd have to go to another unit. We would have to pay a deposit. And what happens there is that, are they going to have probably exorbitant amounts for deposits because of their payment history with other landlords? So we want to make sure that we work with.
Whoa, no, say that again.
Well, if you say that cut your losses, that you're delinquent with the one landlord, if you go make an application at another landlord, if that landlord is aware that you had delinquency rents, you left that apartment with outstanding payments, then your deposit could be increased to the point where we want to make sure that the dollars that we use go to ensure that the person can get into the apartment complex and they can stay there for the duration of their lease agreement.
Okay, so do you have any cases, or have you had any cases where your agency partnered with another agency because the amount of money was beyond your cap?
Well, there are a number of agencies in Houston that provide support for veterans. You have Family Houston, the Salvation Army, you have Baker Ripley. So we try to make sure that they are aware of alternative resources, so that if for some reason we don't pay as part of our program utilities.
Okay.
And so we want to make sure that we direct that veteran to a facility that can help him with utilities. So any dollar that we disperse, we want to make sure that it is used wisely and that it ensures that there's stability in the apartment complex for that veteran.
Okay, I'm going to give you a problem. I want you to see if you can solve it.
I'm going to let Joel solve the problem. So give.
Well, I'm glad you deferred to him because I was going to hit him with it. Anyway, so here's the problem. We've been joined by Captain Joel Benavides. So here's the problem. I don't want to move. I got to get the landlord $2,500. My lights and gas is off. And my car is broken down. how would you begin to address that? And what would a timeline be from start to finish where you've touched everything that you can touch?
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you, Mr. Charles, for the opportunity to be here, and apologize, we live in a big city.
Big city. Big city.
But so as a case manager at the Urban League, we see all types of cases, and certainly this is one that it's, even though it might seem complex, this is the typical kind of cases that we see. These complex cases where there's multiple barriers in the family, in the household, and $2,500 in arrears. There might be mold in the dwelling, car repairs, behind on utility bills. And so as Ms. Lorraine was mentioning, the very first thing that we do is, you come in through our orientation. After you've completed the orientation, we'll sit down and do a one-on-one counseling with you. We'll go over a budget, because first we want to identify what the root cause of the problem was. And if the root cause is a mismanagement of your budget, and that's what's causing the arrears, then we would like to address that with our clients. Now, our one-on-one financial counseling, these are just recommendations that the Urban League is making to the client. This is not us putting you on a budget. It's not a mandatory. Again, our main priority is to empower our clients to become economic self-reliant in their living. But certainly we'll complete that budget with them. There is a certain limit that we can provide assistance with. Once we've reached our cap, we can assist them with the rental arrears. Then we can refer them out to other United Way agencies that will be able to help the veteran or the surviving spouse to secure the rest of those funds for arrears, and also other agencies for utilities and the car repairs.
So is that a 2-week process, 3-week process? What kind of?
I wish I could tell you that it's a week process or it's a 2-week turnaround, but ultimately it all really just comes down, it falls back on the client. How quickly you can produce documents that are required of us. There's certain wickets we need to hit on the way, and how quickly we can complete those tasks. It really all falls back on the client. We've turned around on cases in the 3 days, as quick as 3 days, and we've taken as long as 6 months. So I really can't give you a solid.
Well, that's a good range. That's a good. We can wrap our mind around 3 days, 6 months, paperwork, trying and all of those things.
Yes, sir.
How do you reach the client? Do you do mail outs and you at one central location and invite the public in? Or how do you, or do you go door to door? Or do you have a list of veterans that you mail them things, or how does that work?
Yes, sir. So there's been multiple ways of our outreach. One of them, obviously, is your community exchange breakfast that we've done at Northside Missionary Baptist Church and on the south side as well. But we also have, for our veterans, is through HUD-VASH case managers. So veterans are referred
HUD. So that means the Federal Housing Authority.
Correct.
Refers people to you. You get leads from them.
Correct.
Okay.
For the veterans.
Right.
Now, the surviving spouses, a lot of times it's word of mouth. Word of mouth. It's surviving spouses in their support groups where they meet and they say, hey, the Urban League just helped me. Maybe you should reach out to them. And the United Way helpline, the 211, has been a great resource where we have received referrals from them. So, it could just be word of mouth, a flyer, an outreach event at a breakfast, different ways of
So if we said, so if we at Charity Productions said we want to do something with outreach in a particular neighborhood and we get a building, how would the Urban League's program, Housing for Veterans and Surviving Spouses, how would you help us get the word out and you all be there to facilitate people that would come?
Yes, sir. So we have a team of housing counselors. We've got HUD certified counselors where we can come out there to that center with our housing team, with our manager, Ms. Glenda Kazee, and provide the one-on-one and create or complete assessments on the spot.
Are you landlocked, or what boundaries do you have, or is it this is region what, 13, or is it just Harris County, or is it neighboring counties, or what?
So it's we're serving Harris County and all the surrounding counties. So any other county that's touching Harris, we can serve those counties as well.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
So that's about 6 counties, including Harris?
About nine total.
9 total,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
And a lot of it is just raising the awareness that you find that many veterans aren't aware of the HUD-VASH voucher program. Many citizens in Houston, including veterans, aren't aware of the services provided by the Houston Area Urban League. And one of the things we try to do is, within our outreach, is to educate people in the community so that you are aware of what services are provided at our Griggs Road location. And anybody who comes into the Urban League when it comes to veterans, what we're trying to do now is to capture whether or not that person is a veteran when they do our intake, complete our intake form. And if that person is a veteran, we reach back out to that person to say, are you aware of as a Texas veteran, are you aware of the benefits that you're entitled to? And so we try to push literature out to them so that they are aware. In some cases, we've gotten referrals through the VA case managers from someone who walked in to the Urban League who was looking for a work opportunity, because one of the constraints of the program that we are supporting right now is that you have to have a referral coming from the VA case manager. So we want to make sure we minimize any gaps in time, that if you come to the Urban League, we have to direct you back to the VA Clinic 4 so that you can start that process. And those are just some of the restrictions associated with the program. But again, once you get that VA case manager assigned, then they will reach out to Joel, or they may reach out to me so that we can expedite getting you back into our office so we can start this process.
What is your capacity? What is the dollar amount or human amount that you would reach your limit? Is it 100 people? If we had 100 veterans that needed your service, would that exhaust your budget for providing services?
It's all driven on what their need is. If we had 100 veterans and they all needed $250, then no problem. But we had 100 veterans and they all needed, something that was outside.
$1,200.
Well, I guess if we say 100, they all needed $1,200, we probably that's within our control. But if you had 300 and they all needed $1,200, then our budget may not accommodate that. So we want to make sure.
Can you reach your limit, and if so, what would you do? If we created an event and got 300 veterans to sign up that needed assistance,
we would love to have that problem.
Well, again, we are funded through the Texas Veterans Commission. And if we were to exhaust all of our resources, and all of our funding through the Texas Veterans Commissions, there are other agencies that have received funding through the Texas Veterans Commission, and we could certainly refer them to those agencies and help as much as we can.
So let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
So is it a process that you have built in that you can apply for additional funding from your source?
I would say at this point, no. because again, we are granted X amount for the year. And if, as Joel alluded to, if we were to exceed our amount that were allocated, then if there was a veteran that had a Harvey impact, then within the housing organization, we may be able to help them because if they were had a FEMA case number and were impacted by Harvey. So we start looking for different avenues if we were to exhaust all our funds. And then we are constantly attending meetings with other veteran services type organizations to, again, share ideas, share questions, so that if there is a need, that we can make sure that we reach out to another United Way partner and ensure that that veteran gets service.
So I'm thinking about doing a project since we're talking. And so if we did a project, what would be like 4 agencies that would naturally fit if we had a intake in a specific community? What 4 agencies would you try to invite to be part of that?
I'd definitely first reach out to the VA hospital.
The VA hospital.
Michael E. DeBakey Center, U.S. Vets.
U.S. Vets.
And Ms. Lorraine was talking about the entry points, and Clinic 4 is one of the entry points where veterans can get their initial assessment to see if they would qualify for HUD-VASH. But the Office of U.S. Vets at 1418 Preston, that's another entry point. That's near the ballpark.
Okay.
And so they could go in through there, and we would definitely reach out to them. So that's 2. And the other SSVF partners, the support services for veteran families, we would reach out to those agencies as well.
What about what social service agency, like, is the health department any does it have any touch points?
I'm not sure how in depth health department is.
Okay. But so that's not a right off the top of your head one that would be helpful.
Yeah, that wouldn't be one that we'd reach out if we were looking at housing. Probably it's U.S. Vets, because of their program, that there's anything to do with mental health, they would probably reach out to the health department. But that is not an area that we're providing service right now.
So maybe in October, I'm gonna see if we can do a pilot project. Other than coming to the breakfast, we may try to set up something where we just do a standalone project that borders 2 or 3 different neighborhoods with about maybe 5,000 homes. Let me ask you this: do you all do mail-outs? Or do you have people to pass out flyers on doors when you're going into an area? How does that work?
We haven't. I know the Urban League has done it in the past, but for the veteran program, the veteran support program that we're currently running, we haven't done it, and that's simply because our referral program is through the VA hospital.
Okay.
So the majority of our referrals come directly through HUD-VASH case managers. But if we were to do a mail out, I think it would be to target the surviving spouses of the veterans, to let them know, raise awareness that assistance is here, because our widows, our veteran widows, they go forgotten sometimes, and that's a gap where we're really trying to fill.
Mark, can you put that number up again? What is it? The call-in number. 713-807. You made a point. If there are any surviving spouses,
Yes, sir.
that may need to call in, what is the Urban League's number as well if they need to reach out to you? They may not want to call in to the show, but they may want to call you.
So the number to the Houston Area Urban League is 281-220-6012. and you will talk to one of our representatives there.
Just ask for who?
Ask for Joel Benavides or Miss Lorraine Winslow.
Now give us the number again.
It's 281-220-6012.
Okay, now let me ask you this. What would be the number one, whichever one y'all want to answer, what would be the number one and the number two problem that you all face, or veterans face, that you want the public to be aware of? Is it any signs, like for the shooting, for an example, the mother made a call to the police, but it wasn't enough information. What are the number one and number two signs that if you have a veteran that's in trouble, what would they look at? What would you tell people from to signs to look for, number one and number two?
So
I'm going to defer to Joel again, because Joel is a veteran.
Yeah.
And so he can talk more about transitioning from the military back to civilian life far better than I could even imagine.
So as a veteran, I served almost 13 years in the U.S. Navy. And just like anyone else will tell you, PTSD is the number one, conditions in the veteran community. And a lot of times it's just, body language. Look for the body language. Look for signs of frustration, signs of tired. They're tired. People get easily frustrated, and the best thing the community can do for a veteran is just listen. Just listen. Listen. Hear them out. Because it's tough for a veteran that has been used to a certain type of vocabulary through military service, and then to express and articulate your feelings and what you're feeling and your state of mind. And a lot of times it is a barrier in communication. So what I would ask of the community is just listen. Listen to what the veteran is saying, and refer them to the proper agencies. We've been blessed at the Urban League that, I'm a veteran, and 9 times out of 10, if I don't know the answer, I can point them in the right direction. So that's really the number one thing, is just listen to the veterans, because, we just need to help each other and build each other back up.
So it is possible, if we had some kind of veteran appreciation, just to get them coming to a place at a particular time, and just have people there with those different related services, the veterans might be able to pull in another veteran. Absolutely. That they know.
Absolutely.
So that's another way.
Yes, sir.
Word of mouth. And the reason I bring that up is because the neighborhoods that we service, it's hard. It's just so underserved, and it's one community I thought about is off of Broadway, over there near 610 in Broadway. Well, that's a neighborhood that I've worked over the years, and we have 2 different sites that we go to with our emergency management programs. We circle back. We have several neighborhoods where we go, but that's one of them that we go. We have a cycle. So they have a little community room, and they're connected to a school, and we can invite the parents and everybody to the school. And say we're going to have this program for veterans or surviving spouses. So I'm gonna look at that and see if we could do that. Now here's the statistics. The statistic that I'm gonna read, and I'm gonna get you to give me a guess. Now this is the City of Houston Complete Communities booklet for Acres Homes, and this one I want to see how you can extract veterans in this out of this particular number. if you can. 64 home improvement loans were denied in 2016. 72% of all applicants. What number would you guesstimate is veterans?
Out of the 64%?
Out of the 64 people that applied, it was that 64 that applied represented 72% of all of the applications. So if that's 64, 72, so it must have been close to 100 people that actually applied, and they were denied. 64 were denied. Out of that 64, what would you guess to say how many of that would be veterans?
I'd say about 50 would be veterans.
Really?
Possibly.
Uh-huh.
And we're talking about Acres Homes.
Right, yeah.
And I'm thinking veterans that served in the Vietnam era. And a lot of those veterans only served, they could have served as little as 3 months and as much as 3 years. So those Vietnam era veterans, there's a lot of them out there that, from the ones that I've seen, a lot of these veterans have not filed for a disability claim. They are not receiving disability claims for PTSD or insomnia disorder or even something like tinnitus, hearing loss. And so I dare to say about 50 of those were veterans.
Wow. Wow. Now let me ask you this one. Now this is a question about jobs. How do you see the veterans integrating back into the job market? In any Vietnam era, Afghanistan, any era.
Veterans integrating back into the job and into the market. I think the most critical service era right now is the post 9/11 veterans, which is the younger generation of veterans. And I feel that this is the generation of veterans that should be transitioning easily, because that's the generation that I'm a part of. And as a post 9/11 veteran, it has been a challenge. It has been a barrier, simply because, again, the terminology, the vocabulary, a lot of times just completing your resume and doing your resume. How do you translate, your service evaluations to a civilian vocabulary where a potential employer can understand the tasks and the duties that you did in the military? So that's been a challenge first. And second, interviews. At the Urban League, we have our employment, our job training specialists that help our clients with mock interviews. So that's very important, that the veteran goes to some type of agency where they can practice interviewing, because a lot of veterans don't have that kind of experience. Promotion in the military, it's just taking an exam, you get an evaluation, and you get your chevron. And so it's very cut and dry, very straight to the point. In the civilian world, as we veterans say, you have to go through an interview process. You have to be able to articulate. So it's a barrier, and it's something that we're definitely working with at the Urban League. And those veterans that are coming for rental assistance, we always talk to them about our employment services at the Urban League.
So let me ask you this. What else can you say about the Urban League and what it offers the community?
As I mentioned earlier, I would say the Urban League is an economic development organization that, when you look at, it's about empowering people to maximize all their potential, to maximize all their services, to have the right tools for advancement. When you look at what we do with housing, they have first-time homeowners home buyer seminars. That's preparing you for your first home. If you are facing not eviction, but foreclosure, that there's a team at the housing specialist can work with you before you get into the position where your home is going to be foreclosed by working with your lender. The employment team that we have workshops where we help you write your resume. We do the mock interviews. We have job fairs where potential employers may come in where you can present your resume, or they will look at employers that the Urban League is working with to say that go to this particular employer. There are opportunities there, and they continue to work with those clients. There are other programs. There's a week-long program where the candidates get OSHA certified. They get certified in so many other fields. Again, there's a job fair after that. So there are so many services that are provided by the Urban League that people just don't know about what is happening at, say, 5260 Griggs Road, because it's just a storehouse of resources that if you come in, that anybody who walks through that door, they are treated like you are the number one priority for that team. So when you walk away feeling like, these people care about me. They see that I'm struggling with employment. They see that I'm struggling with housing, and we want to make sure that we are urban leaguers. And if you are urban leaguers, you have to have a compassion for people. And anybody who comes through the front door, we want to make sure they walk away with a feeling that they care.
Let me ask you this, because in the opening statements, what are you going to be doing? Do you have any idea what you're going to be doing related to the census?
Yes.
You do?
We actually, earlier today, we've been in several meetings working with the census. We have a person that we brought on board who is our census organizer. So we will be working with the community to establish community organizers so that we can ensure that we'll have teams working in the community, so making people aware that the census is coming. Coupled with census, we'll be looking at making sure people are aware that election year is upon us, the need to vote, and educating everyone regarding when you don't reply to the census, it has a financial impact to the city, to Harris County, of billions of dollars, because every decision that's made by big business, by the federal government, is based upon redistricting, is made on that census count. So it's to everyone's benefit to stand up and be counted.
Right there. Mark, could you go to that slide? Not that one, the other one. You made a point I'm glad you made it. Yes. Now, that slide, the one sitting by itself, represents about 100 subdivisions, 27 to 43 zip codes. And that is an area that government has identified, and the health department, we got their baseline map in 2009, and they identified that as the most vulnerable populations in Houston.
The underserved.
Right. Now, so to the underserved person that has participated in the census, and that underserved person, school closed, food deserts, drainage not fixed, trash not being picked up sometime, how could we convince them that they need to be counted? Now that's a real.
It's a really
I deal with
question.
that. I deal with that every day.
That is an excellent question. And we've talked about that in our
and the reason
ourselves.
I want to elaborate on this, you let our president know, Justin Robinson. Justin, you know, you need to come on, man, and get me involved with that census thing. I'm making a pitch.
Okay.
But anyway, so how do you do that? And you've seen it in other ways in the veterans program, but just as a service provider, we see this kind of stuff. People tell us, I'm not doing that.
Somehow you have to convince people that you just can't stop. You know, things may not be, the services that you feel like you need, you may not be receiving them right now. And I might be naive in saying this, but you've got to encourage people that there's power in your vote, there's power in your standing up to be counted, because hopefully things won't be the way they are always. But if you fail to get counted when there's an opportunity for change, you won't be part of that number.
Okay. And that's a perfect answer. Okay. But I got a guy that his trash hasn't been picked up over the last 6 years regular at all. How do I talk to him? He don't want to hear that. All he want to know is my trash not being picked up. There's a crack house down the way.
But you know, I think we also have to get community organizers involved. People in the community who want to take action for things going on in their community. If you see that your trash has not been picked up, then are you just waiting for somebody to pick it up? Are you screaming loud? Are you working with your city council people? Do you have community activists in your neighborhood saying, we are not going to accept this, so we need to collectively come together, and when we're going to voice our concerns loud and clearly so that somebody finally hears us. But again, a lot of times you go and people don't, oh, I don't want to do that. They don't want to get involved.
Yeah, and I'm kind of teasing with you a little bit, but I do see this all the time. And yes, that is part of the problem. People are waiting or expecting someone else to do it. And I was in a discussion with a group at Texas A&M, and I said, but their unwillingness is not apathy. Their unwillingness is disappointment for trying over and over and over. So this is 6 years. He hasn't said anything, but he had 22 years that he was a Civic Club president or involved in the Civic Club, and it still didn't happen. So we can go back to Kathy Whitmire, Lee Brown, Bill White, Parker, Nat Turner, and whoever else that I forgot. But the point is that it keeps happening. And when I first saw that map from the city of Houston Health Department, it dawned on me that the city of Houston government, it could be Baltimore, it could be Washington, D.C., it could be anywhere, they designate these neighborhoods as low performing, at risk, high risk. But the reason they're at risk, underserved, is because the taxpayer dollars is not flowing. Because these people weren't just non-participating people in society. These blue-collar workers, they paid the taxes, school taxes, and didn't even have children in the school district. But the school closed. It's a cycle that you know, it needs to be more of a discussion with agencies like the Urban League, City of Houston, different departments, because there is a solution, but people are tired, and the younger people just, they don't make the connection. You can talk to them, so there's a gap on why I need to do this. And then the other side of the gap is, how do I do this? So the why and the how is what's in the gap. And it's a bad bad situation that we need to start addressing, because there are not many more advocates around. There are not. In the 80s, there were many civic clubs that were a lot more active. Mm-hmm. In the 80s, up to about 95, there were people in the community with drill squads. They had a job, but they had a drill squad too. All girls. There were people in the community that had little league coaches. They had baseball teams. It's a withdrawal. It's shrinking. It's shrinking. And the reason it's shrinking is because of economics. Lack of jobs, no development, or only development in certain times, in certain tracks, what they call nodes of opportunity. They're going to put development dollars in this section because it's on the way to the airport. It's so many different reasons why the condition is like it is beyond the people. The people are exhausted. The people have been beat down. The people that are there. Now the young folk, they just don't know.
Yeah, but I think it's important that somehow we have to get the young people to have that zeal that their parents or their grandparents had in our communities. And hopefully to end this cycle where the communities aren't being serviced. And I don't have the right answer. I just feel like that's important too. And that hopefully things will change eventually. But again, if you are not active in the community, when you see things happening in your community, and you become, and sometimes you can become complacent because you've not seen anything change. But when you get the youth in these communities, because their parents diligently worked hard to ensure that the community was serviced. And how do you then take that baton that your parents struggled to buy houses and give you a good education, or give you the opportunity to get a good education, and carry that so that you revitalize the neighborhoods that we live in?
Well, Mark. Hey, Mark.
I'm here.
Can I basically close out, and we close out on that clip? Is that doable?
It's longer than that.
Yeah, but
Off in the middle.
But that's okay. They'll at least the audience at least will have a chance to hear that first section that gives those statistics from 1965. Is that all right?
You're the boss.
Okay, well, if I'm the boss, this is Charles X. White with Community Views and Solutions. We're about to sign off, but we have a video clip of some very provocative statistics about black people in America. Can you run it now, Mark? We'll see you next time.
Since 1965, the number of black elected officials has exploded. Between 1970 and 2012, it grew from fewer than 1,500 to more than 10,000. And oh yes, a black man was elected president, twice. Conventional wisdom would suggest that all these political gains would lead to economic gains, but that has not proven to be the case. In fact, during an era of growing black political influence, blacks as a group progressed at a slower rate than whites, and the black poor actually lost ground. Why was the conventional wisdom wrong? Because it was based on the incorrect assumption that politics was the pathway to black progress. Only black politicians, so the thinking went, could properly understand and address the challenges facing black Americans. It wasn't stable families, hard work, or education that would lift blacks into the middle class. It was more black city councilmen, congressmen, and senators. But the evidence, even according to liberal social scientists like Gary Orfield, indicates that there may be little relationship between the success of black leaders and the opportunities of typical black families. So while black politicians from Tom Bradley and Marion Barry to Maxine Waters and John Conyers achieved considerable personal success, their constituents did not. Yet this calculus, political success as a prerequisite to a better life, remains progressive orthodoxy today. When Michael Brown was shot dead after assaulting a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, much was made over the racial composition of the police department and city leaders. But if black representation among law enforcement and city officials is so critically important, how do you explain the rioting in Baltimore the following year after a black suspect there died in police custody? At the time, 40% of Baltimore's police officers were black. The Baltimore Police Commissioner was also black, along with the mayor and a majority of the city council. What can be said of Baltimore is also true of Cleveland, Detroit, Philadelphia, Atlanta, New Orleans, and Washington, D.C., where black mayors and police chiefs and city councilmen and school superintendents have been in office for decades. But to what end? As I document in my book, False Black Power, when blacks had little political power, they nevertheless made significant economic progress. In the 1940s and 50s, black labor participation rates exceeded those of whites. Black incomes grew much faster than white incomes, and the black poverty rate fell by 40 percentage points. Between 1940 and 1970, that is, during the Jim Crow era, with its racist laws, and before any affirmative action, the number of blacks in middle-class professions quadrupled. In other words, racial gaps were steadily narrowing without any special treatment for blacks. And then came the war on poverty in the mid-60s. This was supposed to close the gap once and for all. Yet despite billions of dollars of government assistance in the form of welfare payments, housing projects, and enforced hiring programs like affirmative action, black poverty rates remained unchanged relative to white poverty rates. In fact, a strong case can be made that to the extent that a social program, however well-meaning, interferes with a group's self-development, it does more harm than good. Government policies that discourage marriage and undermine the work ethic, open-ended welfare benefits, for example, help keep poor people poor. No wonder, then, that more black politicians bringing home more government aid has done so little to improve rates of black employment, home ownership, and academic achievement. As economist Thomas Sowell explains, the relationship between political success and economic success has been more nearly inverse than direct. The history of Germans, Jews, and Italians in America supports Sowell's observation. Each of these groups made significant economic gains before ever attaining significant political power. Asians are the most recent example. How many prominent Asian politicians can you name? On the other hand, the Irish, whose rise from poverty in the 19th century was especially slow, were very politically successful. Irish-run political organizations in places like Boston and Philadelphia dominated local government. In the U.S., the Irish had more political success than any other ethnic minority group. Yet the Irish were, according to Sowell, the slowest rising of all European immigrants to America. The black experience in America is, of course, different from the experience of the Irish or any other ethnic minority. But that doesn't undermine the obvious conclusion. Human capital is far more important than political capital. And the formula for prosperity is the same across the human spectrum. Traditional values such as marriage, stable families, education, and hard work are immeasurably more important than the color of your congressman, or senator, or police chief, or president. I'm Jason Riley of the Manhattan Institute for Prager University.